Have you ever found yourself questioning the love you once had for your partner as the years go by? You're not alone. Many women experience a shift in their feelings as they age, often grappling with resentment and frustration toward the very husbands they once adored. In this video, we delve into the complex emotions that arise in long-term relationships, exploring the practical reasons behind this phenomenon. As we share the compelling story of Anne and John, a couple who navigated the challenges of marriage over 40 years, you'll discover the key insights that can help mend the bonds that may feel frayed. You'll learn about the importance of communication, the need for mutual understanding, and the significance of adapting to change as both partners grow older. Stay with us until the end to uncover valuable lessons that can transform your relationship, whether it's rekindling that lost spark or understanding how to confront and resolve underlying issues. This journey is not just about love, it's about nurturing a lasting partnership that thrives through life's inevitable changes. Don't miss out on these profound insights that could reshape your perspective on love and marriage in your later years. If you are not subscribed, I recommend subscribing and activating the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support means a lot to me, and if you enjoyed this video, you can help me continue spreading the valuable lessons by liking and sharing it. If you like the topic of this video, please comment 1. If you don't, please comment 0 to let me know how I can improve and make better videos for you. Now, let's begin. When I finally have a rare moment of quiet at home, I often sit there, reflecting deeply on the life I've led and the choices I've made. I wonder, how did it come to this? How did I reach the point where just the sight of my husband, this man I've shared decades with, could evoke such bitterness in my heart? I feel trapped in a whirlwind of emotions, questioning why I feel such a strong dislike for him. Sometimes, just being in the same room as he saps my energy, leaving me feeling drained, frustrated, and honestly deeply disappointed. When I met him, he was gruff, yes, but I thought he had a good heart. He was dedicated to his work, and he handed over his paycheck to me every month, trusting me to manage the family's finances. But that's where his sense of responsibility seemed to end. For as long as I can remember, he's distanced himself from any kind of help with household chores. He acted as if the home and everything in it, the cooking, the cleaning, the planning, the raising of children, were somehow exclusively my domain, tasks he was simply too removed from to even consider. Then, a few years ago, our lives changed once again. Both our son and daughter welcomed children of their own, and while they were overwhelmed by work and the demands of new parenthood, I saw how much they were struggling. I remember the days when I was a young mother, so overwhelmed and desperate for support. So, I didn't hesitate. Out of love and sympathy, I stepped up, offering to care for my grandchildren full-time. My husband agreed without a second thought, but that was exactly the problem. He agreed because he knew I would be the one doing it all. As the days turned into years, I was suddenly raising 2 young children again. I was the one waking up early to prepare meals, the one chasing after little feet, the one who spent sleepless nights comforting them when they were sick. My days blurred together, filled with cooking, cleaning, and keeping up with the relentless demands of caring for young children. I sacrificed sleep, personal time, and any semblance of relaxation. And throughout it all, my husband remained unmoved, a silent figure in the background of our lives. He would sit there, glued to his phone or watching TV, seemingly indifferent to the exhaustion that was etched on my face. The worst part was that he knew how hard I was working. He knew how tired I was, how every bone in my body ached from endless tasks, but he never once offered to help. Not even to hold a hand when I was struggling with bags of groceries, or to watch the children for a few minutes so I could catch my breath. Instead, he continued to live his life untouched by any of the burdens I carried. He slept when he wanted, ate whenever he pleased, and indulged in his quiet time, oblivious to the chaos around him. The contrast between us was stark. While he lived in peaceful detachment, I was buried under the weight of everyone else's needs. The resentment festered, building up inside me until I couldn't hold it in any longer. I would confront him, pleading with him to understand how selfish he was being. I'd ask him why he couldn't show even a sliver of compassion, why he wouldn't lift a single finger to help ease my load. But every argument seemed to bounce off him as if he were made of stone. He would look at me and tell me, without a hint of guilt, that I had chosen this life, that I had decided to take on these responsibilities. He told me I was making trouble for myself by volunteering to care for the grandchildren, and that I was the one bringing this hardship on myself. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Those words struck me like a knife. Here was a man who had lived under the same roof and seen the sacrifices I made, and instead of empathy, he threw it back at me as if I was foolish for caring so deeply. It made me so angry, angrier than I'd ever been in my life. In those moments, I wanted nothing more than to throw him out of the house, to finally be free of his apathy, his cold indifference. But somehow I continued, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he'd wake up to the reality of what I was going through. After years of this, the grandchildren grew older, eventually going off to school. For the first time in what felt like forever, I found myself with empty hours, moments where I could finally breathe and consider my own needs. I thought, maybe this is my time. Maybe now, I could start doing the things I'd always dreamed of, the things I had pushed aside for so long. I dreamed of traveling, of taking a break, of seeing places that would refresh my spirit. I imagined myself walking along the beach, feeling the sun on my face, finally free from the daily grind. But life had other plans. Just as I began to make arrangements, my husband's health took a turn for the worse. Years of heavy smoking caught up with him, leaving him with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease that required hospitalization and constant care. And once again, my dreams faded, replaced by yet another weight on my shoulders. The very man who had never once lifted a finger to help me was now dependent on me for everything, and I found myself at a crossroads between duty and despair. Now, here I am, once again sacrificing my desires, trapped in a cycle of care and frustration. I wonder, will I ever get a chance to live for myself, to embrace the freedom I've longed for? Or will I always be bound to a life of servitude, burdened by someone who never thought to share the weight? As I sit here, lost in thought, I can't help but feel the ache of all the years that have slipped through my fingers, all the dreams I let go of for a love that was never reciprocated. It is a loneliness that runs deep, a bitterness that lingers, and a sadness that feels like it will never fully leave. My husband's smoking habit has become an emotional burden that weighs heavily on my heart every single day. He's a heavy smoker, needing at least a full pack each day just to feel normal. Each morning, before he even considers brushing his teeth or washing his face, his very first act is to light a cigarette and inhale deeply, as though it's the one thing that sustains him. It's painful to watch him choose this over even the simplest acts of self-care. To make things worse, he insists on buying the cheapest, lowest quality cigarettes. I've begged him countless times to at least choose a better brand, to reduce some of the dangers, but he just won't listen. He'd rather smoke more of the poor quality ones than reduce his intake. His stubbornness cuts deeply, a constant reminder of how little my words mean when it comes to his addiction. I can see how it's affecting him, how his health has been deteriorating with every cigarette. Each night, before we go to bed, he coughs so violently it terrifies me. His coughing echoes through the silence, so intense that I sometimes lie awake, fearing the worst. One night, his coughing escalated to a terrifying level. I thought it would pass, as I'd grown used to his bouts of coughing, but this time was different. It was relentless, unyielding, to the point where he could barely catch his breath. His face turned an alarming shade of red, veins straining against his skin. My heart pounded with fear as I frantically called for an ambulance, praying he would be okay. The doctors later confirmed what I had feared. He was diagnosed with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. They were adamant that he had to quit smoking immediately if he wanted any chance at a healthier life or even just a longer one. In the hospital, he promised them he would stop, agreeing with every warning. But as soon as he was discharged, his promises vanished. I'd find him sneaking cigarettes in the bathroom, or going out to buy more whenever I tried to hide them. It feels like betrayal. He knows the risks, he's heard the warnings, and yet he continues as if his life means nothing. I try to talk sense into him, to show him that he has so much to live for, that I need him here with me. But he simply brushes me off, saying he's already lived long enough, and that if he can't smoke, life isn't worth living. I'd rather die, he says, casually tossing aside his health, and my feelings, as if they're nothing. It's not just his health he's risking, it's mine too. Every time he smokes around me, I'm forced to breathe in that dangerous smoke. I've read countless studies about the dangers of secondhand smoke, and I know it puts me at risk. But does he care? No. His recklessness forces me into a place of constant worry and resentment. We've argued about it so many times, but he never hears me. It's as if he's chosen his cigarettes over our marriage, over my well-being, and over the future we could have together. Sometimes, I lie awake wondering if he'll ever change, if he'll ever realize the damage he's causing not just to himself, but to both of us. It breaks my heart to feel so helpless, to watch him slowly destroy his health, our life, and my peace of mind, one cigarette at a time. As I think back to the early days of our marriage, I remember how youthful we both were, full of energy, and how even his bad habits seemed trivial, almost charming in their way. Despite his smoking, his breath was still somehow tolerable, and I could overlook it. But now, things have changed so drastically that I feel a bitter sense of loss. His breath, once just a faint annoyance, has now turned sour and stale, a constant reminder of his neglect. Years of relentless smoking have yellowed his teeth to a shade that I can hardly bear to look at, yet he refuses to care for them properly. His once light-hearted disregard has now become an act of complete selfishness. Every time he leans in close, the stench is overwhelming, enough to make my stomach turn. It's not only unpleasant but a painful symbol of how far we've drifted. Night after night, I lie awake next to him, listening to his snoring that's grown louder with the years, echoing through the silence and robbing me of sleep. I've begged him to sleep in the living room, hoping for even a single night of rest, but he adamantly refuses. He argues that he has a right to the comfort of our bedroom, as though my comfort has become irrelevant. In the end, it's me who retreats to the living room, clutching a blanket and desperately wishing for peace, but he won't let it rest. He pulls me back, demanding I stay, and when I resist, he raises his voice, starting an argument loud enough to disturb the entire neighborhood. I'm left with no choice but to return, enduring the sleepless hours, trying not to resent him more deeply each night. The lack of sleep is wearing on me, both physically and mentally. I've started to feel the toll on my health. Constant fatigue, a drained spirit, a growing heaviness in my heart. The worst part is that he doesn't see it. He's so wrapped up in his own needs that my suffering goes unnoticed. Every time I feel unwell, my frustration grows, and I find myself despising him, wishing he could see how his thoughtlessness is slowly breaking me. I never imagined our life would be like this. When we were young, we dreamed of growing old together, picturing a future filled with shared laughter and support. But now, that dream feels like a cruel memory, taunting me with what we've lost. He's grown indifferent to his hygiene, no longer caring if he smells of age or neglect. Even the simple request for him to take a shower feels like a battle. He drifts off to bed without washing his feet, leaving an odor in our bed that clings to the sheets and invades our home. And each day, I scrub those sheets, hoping to wash away more than just the smell, perhaps to cleanse some of the bitterness that's building up inside me. When I talk with friends my age, I hear the same complaints. Husbands becoming more unkempt, more self-centered, and indifferent. We vent, we share our grievances, and we try to find comfort in knowing we're not alone. But deep down, the despair lingers. I once saw a future where we would face life's trials together, hand in hand, but now it feels like I'm living through a never-ending punishment, a life trapped in resentment. Each day, I feel more hopeless, questioning if it's me who has changed or if he's the one who's left our love behind. This story, my story, is one shared by so many women as they journey through the later years of marriage. What once felt like a partnership has become a lonely road of sacrifice, a struggle to reconcile love with the painful reality of a life together. Why is it that, after so many years, a woman's heart can grow so weary, so distant, from the man she once adored? Why does the love that once felt so sure begin to fade into frustration and sorrow as the years go by? One of the most heartbreaking realities in many marriages as couples age is the glaring inequality in family responsibilities. For years, wives often carried the weight of the household, putting aside their own needs and enduring their husbands' bad habits, all for the love of their family and the well-being of their children. They tolerated more than they should have, perhaps believing things would change. Yet, as they grow older, they find themselves worn down, not only by age and health challenges but by the mounting expectations to care for grandchildren. And when they look to their husbands, hoping for support, they're met with indifference. A husband who remains carefree, seemingly unburdened by the family's needs, while his wife carries the weight of it all alone. It's a painful reality that breeds deep-seated resentment. This isn't just weariness. It's a profound sense of exhaustion and disappointment that no longer goes unnoticed. As these women mature, they begin to experience an awakening, a newfound self-awareness and recognition of the preciousness of life. No longer absorbed in the demands of work or child-rearing, they now have the time to reflect on their sacrifices, their dreams, and what true happiness might look like for them. They start to see the flaws in their husbands that love, duty, or the chaos of life once obscured. These realizations aren't signs of failing love. Rather, they reflect a maturity, a deep desire for a life that is genuine, fulfilling, and free from the shadows of past compromises. The question of divorce, however, is far from simple. For a woman who has devoted decades to her marriage, considering divorce isn't just about ending a relationship. It's about facing the profound fear of loneliness, the possible judgment of society, and the impact on her family, particularly her children. Divorce at this stage feels like a balancing act between honoring her right to happiness and feeling the weight of social and familial expectations. Is it worth it? Should she choose a path that might bring personal freedom but disrupt the lives of those around her? Divorce could, in some cases, offer a pathway to peace and emotional freedom. It might symbolize an escape from years of silent suffering, a chance to reclaim her spirit. But does it truly resolve the core issues? Much of the discontent may stem not from the marriage itself, but from a deeper sense of abandonment, the absence of understanding, or a loss of intimacy. Sometimes, the solution lies not in separation, but in rediscovering the connection that once held them together. A raw, honest conversation could be the lifeline they both need. If both are willing to communicate openly and make genuine efforts, they might rediscover the balance and partnership they once had. Before making such a life-altering choice, this conversation could be a powerful step towards healing, reconnection, and perhaps even rekindling a shared joy in the years to come. Preserving family happiness is a cherished but complex journey that requires consistent, heartfelt effort from both partners. Family happiness isn't something that happens by chance. It's something we build, layer by layer, especially as the years go by and life shifts around us. The first essential step in this journey is often acceptance. The kind of acceptance that embraces change, both expected and unexpected. Time touches each of us in ways we can't control. It changes our bodies, our minds, and our perspectives. Wrinkles emerge, hair grays, habits deepen, and personalities evolve. Sometimes, the energetic partner we married becomes quieter with age, or the once adventurous spouse seeks stability and peace. This gradual transformation requires understanding, patience, and a vast well of compassion. True acceptance of change also calls for forgiveness, perhaps more than we might realize. It's easy to hold on to memories of how things once were, comparing the present with an idealized past. But clinging too tightly to that image risks overlooking the person your partner has become. Perhaps they're not the same as they were years ago, and neither are you. Each partner brings their insecurities, vulnerabilities, and even fears about aging, and if we open our hearts to those changes, we create space for a love that is richer, deeper, and more forgiving. Embracing each other with fresh eyes and choosing to see beyond the surface is an essential act of love that says, "I'm here with all my heart for who you are now." Equally important is communication. More vital than ever in later years, yet often overlooked. After decades together, some couples may feel they know everything about each other, but that's far from true. Life has a way of changing us subtly, shaping our thoughts, beliefs, and desires. But sometimes, older couples drift into routines and forget that to keep a relationship alive, you must continue to learn about each other, to truly listen and speak from the heart. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment below to let me know that you are still here with me. Instead of assuming or brushing things aside, they need to create moments of open dialogue, moments to reconnect and share their thoughts, dreams, or even worries. Sometimes, all it takes to bridge the silence is a heartfelt conversation, a real, open talk where both partners feel safe to express their feelings without judgment. These conversations are like fresh air in a room that's been closed off, letting light and warmth back into the space. They rekindle the connection that may have dimmed and remind both partners of the bond they once shared and still can strengthen. Exploring new activities together can also add joy and spontaneity to the relationship. Once the children are grown and out on their own, couples are often given the gift of time, a chance to pursue dreams they may have set aside, or to simply be together without the many responsibilities that once took center stage. Traveling, taking up hobbies, or simply rediscovering the joys of a quiet walk can become cherished moments that nourish the relationship. These activities don't have to be extravagant. Sometimes, a simple evening watching a beautiful sunset, a weekend away, or learning something new together can bring joy and a sense of adventure back into the relationship. In a way, this is a second chance to enjoy each other as they did in younger years, without the demands of careers, children, and the rush of daily life. Lastly, preserving family happiness means embracing the imperfections of marriage and family life. It's about accepting that no relationship, no matter how beautiful or loving, is without its flaws. Every relationship will face challenges and conflicts, and as we grow older, these can feel even more pronounced. It's natural to feel frustrated, disappointed, or even resentful at times. Older women, in particular, may feel the weight of unspoken sacrifices they've made over the years, which can lead to feelings of resentment. But these feelings, rather than tearing the relationship apart, can be the foundation for growth. Instead of seeing these challenges as a sign of failure, they can be seen as opportunities to strengthen the bond through understanding and forgiveness. Love doesn't have to be a blazing fire that never wavers. Sometimes, it's a gentle, steady warmth that needs tending and care. Divorce or separation may seem like the only answer in times of hardship, but for some, there is power in choosing to stay, work through the difficulties, and find new ways to love each other. By staying, they choose a love that is resilient and deep, a love that isn't bound by youthful passion but is strengthened by years of shared memories, mutual respect, and patience. Instead of seeking perfection, they accept each other as they are, flaws and all, finding a different kind of beauty in the commitment they've made. The story of Anne and John, a couple married for over 40 years, beautifully illustrates this journey. They once shared a passionate, hopeful love that carried them through the early years of their marriage. But as their children grew up and left home, their lives shifted in unexpected ways. John found solace in his hobbies, spending more time away, while Anne began to feel increasingly isolated. She missed the days when they would talk late into the night or laugh together with their children around. She felt that her role in the family had faded, leaving her with a sense of emptiness. But rather than giving up, Anne and John chose to work through these challenges. They reconnected, found new ways to enjoy each other's company, and ultimately rediscovered a love that had matured and deepened. Their story reminds us that family happiness doesn't stem from perfection. It's a product of patience, compassion, and a willingness to grow together. It teaches us that love isn't always effortless but requires dedication, flexibility, and an open heart. A marriage built on mutual acceptance and effort can endure the test of time, creating a foundation of joy and peace that carries through the later years, enriching both partners and their families with a legacy of lasting love and understanding. From the first time they met at that school dance, John and Anne's connection felt like destiny. It was a magical evening, the kind of night that lives on in cherished memories. Anne still remembered how her heart raced when John asked her to dance, his eyes full of warmth and kindness. She, a young woman studying education, had always dreamed of inspiring future generations, and John, an ambitious engineering student, had big dreams of his own. They were young, hopeful, and so deeply in love that it felt like nothing in the world could come between them. Their early years together were full of joy and promise. They shared dreams, laughter, and countless plans for the future, determined to build a life they could both be proud of. When they married, their love was the foundation of everything they built. They worked together to create a home, a haven where they would raise their 2 children, Jack and Emily, and decided to put her teaching dreams on hold, dedicating herself fully to nurturing their young family. She took pride in crafting a warm, loving household, where their children could thrive, be supported, and be cherished every day. Those were golden years, filled with shared celebrations and quiet, tender moments. Family vacations to the mountains and seaside became traditions, and their little home was constantly alive with laughter, small but filled with love. John worked hard, putting in long hours to provide for his family, while Anne poured herself into being a mother and wife. Every small victory, from a child's first step to a family meal shared around the dinner table, felt like a testament to their love. Yet, as time passed, life's rhythm shifted in ways they hadn't anticipated. Their children grew up faster than they could have imagined. Suddenly, Jack was heading off to college, and Emily took a job in a distant city, leaving their family home empty and quiet. The house, once filled with endless activity, laughter, and joy, was now marked by an almost eerie silence. Anne found herself wandering through empty rooms, feeling the weight of her loneliness in every corner. The family photos, once symbols of shared happiness, now felt like reminders of a life that was slipping further away. For Anne, the departure of their children left a void that seemed impossible to fill. She felt a deep ache inside her, an emptiness that grew with each passing day. She couldn't shake the feeling that her purpose, her identity as a mother and caretaker, had somehow been taken away. Although she and John were still together, the closeness they once shared began to fade, as if they were living parallel lives instead of sharing one. While John seemed at peace with this new phase, and found herself struggling, grasping for a sense of belonging and connection that seemed to have slipped away. When John retired, and hoped it would bring them closer, giving them more time to rekindle the companionship they once had. But instead, John found solace in gardening, a hobby that quickly became his escape from the world, and her. He would spend hours outside, lost in the garden he had lovingly cultivated, tending to flowers and plants as if they were his children. The garden became his sanctuary, a place of peace and purpose, and Anne found herself on the outside, watching as her husband drifted further away from her. At first, Anne tried to join him, suggesting they work together in the garden or spend more time on activities they both enjoyed. But each attempt seemed to fall flat. John, absorbed in his plants, would only half listen, responding with short, distracted answers before returning to his flowers. Anne's heart grew heavy with disappointment. She missed the man who once hung on her every word, the man who would laugh with her over small, silly things. Now, even the small tasks she asked him to help with around the house, like fixing a broken faucet or cleaning the yard, were met with reluctance or forgotten altogether. The sense of neglect became a constant, quiet hurt that she carried with her. Anne's sadness became almost palpable, an invisible weight she bore in silence. She felt herself withdrawing, afraid to voice her loneliness for fear of pushing John even further away. But her longing for connection didn't fade. Instead, it grew. One evening, in a last, hopeful gesture, she decided to make a special dinner for him. She spent hours preparing his favorite dishes, setting the table with candles, hoping this small act would remind him of the warmth they once shared. As she waited for him to come in, A sense of hope filled her, like the fragile light of a candle in a dark room. When John finally entered, he looked at the meal, gave her a brief nod of appreciation, and then quickly excused himself to return to his garden, and sat there, her heart sinking as she watched him walk away without a second thought. She felt utterly invisible, as if all her love and effort meant nothing to him. That night, she cleared the table alone, her mind swirling with a sadness that words couldn't express. Her heart was filled with a quiet, growing resentment, like a storm building in the distance, waiting to break. Then, one day, Anne fell seriously ill. She was too weak to get out of bed, feeling drained and helpless. She hoped John would notice her absence from the usual routines and come to check on her, offer her a comforting touch, or simply sit with her. But the hours passed, and John, lost in his garden, barely glanced her way. His footsteps, once a comforting presence in their home, now echoed her loneliness. She lay there, silently yearning for a moment of care, but none came. The emptiness of her bed and the silence of the house amplified her isolation. As the day turned to evening, and she could bear it no longer, she finally whispered, "Did you notice I've been sick all day?" Her voice, fragile and filled with hurt, seemed to echo in the room. John looked at her, startled, but his response cut through her like ice. "Oh, why didn't you tell me earlier?" With that, he turned away, returning to his routine, leaving and feeling as if her heart had shattered into pieces. In that moment, she realized how deeply she had been abandoned, not just in her illness, but in her very soul. The love that had once felt like the foundation of their lives was now a distant memory, a faint echo in the quiet of their empty home. And lay there, her body weak and her spirit broken, feeling a pain that went far beyond physical illness. It was a pain rooted in the loss of companionship, of shared dreams, of a love that once felt unbreakable. She felt a profound loneliness, as though the man she had once adored was now a stranger, living beside her but miles away in his heart. In that moment of heartbreak, Anne could no longer deny the emptiness that had crept into her life. The dreams they had built together, the life they had crafted with love and laughter, now seemed like distant memories, mere shadows of the joy they once shared. As the years slipped by, Anne found herself feeling increasingly isolated within her marriage. She often looked at John, the man who had once been her best friend, her confidant, and her partner in every sense, and felt a deep pang of sadness. Where had that caring, attentive husband gone? They shared a life, a home, and a history, but it was as if he was now a stranger. Each of them seemed to be living in separate worlds, and Anne was drowning in the quiet ache of loneliness, wondering if this was what the rest of her life would feel like. She couldn't bear the thought that this was all there was, a life lived side by side but worlds apart. One evening, Anne lay awake, staring at the ceiling and thinking about how her life had become a hollow echo of what it once was. Memories of laughter, shared dreams, and intimate moments seemed like faded photographs, relics of a time she could barely remember. As these thoughts consumed her, a sudden clarity washed over her. She needed to change something, anything, or risk losing herself entirely to the numbness that had settled in her heart. It was on one of these soul-searching walks in the park that fate took an unexpected turn. As Anne wandered, trying to quiet her restless mind, she stumbled upon a group of women painting under the dappled sunlight. They were gathered under a canopy of trees, each lost in their creative world, and yet they shared laughter, warmth, and camaraderie that was palpable even from afar. She paused, watching them in awe, feeling a faint spark of curiosity and yearning. One of the women noticed Anne's lingering gaze and waved her over with a warm smile. "Come join us," she called, her voice carrying a genuine kindness that Anne hadn't felt in a long time. At first, Anne hesitated, her mind flooded with self-doubt. She hadn't picked up a paintbrush since she was a young girl, and she was terrified of looking foolish. But something in her, a buried part of herself that longed for expression, pushed her to accept the invitation. Tentatively, she picked up a brush, and as she dipped it into a pot of paint, she felt a strange, liberating thrill. With each stroke, she poured out the emotions she had been carrying alone for years. The vibrant colors on the canvas became a language, a voice she hadn't realized she still possessed. As Anne painted, her mind drifted to all the unspoken words, the suppressed feelings, and the quiet desperation that had filled her heart. She felt a sense of freedom and relief she hadn't known in years, as though each brushstroke was lifting a weight from her soul. Painting became her sanctuary, a place where she could finally breathe again. Day after day, she returned to the park, finding solace in her new routine. Each evening, she came home with paint on her fingers, her heart a little lighter, and her spirit a little brighter. Yet, every time she crossed the threshold of their home, she found John still engrossed in his world, tending to his garden or buried in a book, seemingly oblivious to the changes in her. He never asked about her day, her newfound hobby, or the joy that had quietly started to bloom within her. This indifference stung and, deepening the loneliness she thought she had begun to escape. Weeks passed, and Anne's frustration grew. She couldn't understand how John, who once noticed every small detail about her, could be so blind to the person she was becoming. It was as if he had stopped seeing her altogether, and that realization weighed heavily on her heart. The more she tried to understand it, the more she felt an intense need to confront the growing chasm between them. One evening, after a particularly fulfilling painting session, she felt a surge of courage. She decided she could no longer ignore the emptiness that had crept into their marriage. As they sat down to dinner, she took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of bravery, and looked John squarely in the eye. "John," she began softly, but firmly, "do you even realize how far apart we've grown?" He looked up, startled, clearly taken aback by the raw honesty in her voice. For a moment, he was silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air between them. Anne's voice trembled as she continued, but she pressed on, pouring out everything she had kept bottled up inside. She told him about the countless times she had asked for help around the house, only to be brushed aside because he was busy. She reminded him of the time she had fallen ill and spent days alone in bed, feeling utterly abandoned, while he barely seemed to notice. She spoke of the loneliness that had become her constant companion, even in his presence. John listened in silence, a dawning look of realization and guilt softening his features. He hadn't realized the depth of her pain, nor had he understood how his neglect had cut her so deeply. He felt a pang of shame as he recognized the truth in her words. He had been so wrapped up in his world, in his hobbies and routines, that he hadn't noticed his wife slipping away from him. With a heavy heart, he reached out to her, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry, Anne. I've been selfish. I never meant to hurt you like this." That conversation marked a turning point, a quiet but powerful shift in the landscape of their marriage. John realized he had taken their life together for granted, and he knew he had to make a change if he wanted to save their relationship. He began to pay attention to the small things, to see her again, and to participate in her world. One day, he surprised her by asking if he could join her at her art class. Though he had no talent for painting, he was willing to try, if only to be close to her and understand the passion that had reignited her spirit. Together, they spent hours with brushes in hand, each painting in their way but sharing a quiet joy in simply being together. Those art sessions became a place where they could reconnect without the need for words. They painted side by side, sometimes in silence, sometimes laughing at John's messy, clumsy attempts, but always feeling the warmth of each other's presence. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 3 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Beyond painting, John started organizing small getaways, moments for them to explore the world beyond the walls of their home. They took weekend picnics to places they hadn't visited in years, like the scenic lake where they had once shared their first kiss, or the old cafe in town where they had spent countless hours talking about their dreams. Each outing was a reminder of the love they had shared in their youth, and every laugh and smile felt like a bridge that slowly but surely closed the distance between them. For Anne, the pain of loneliness was gradually replaced by a renewed sense of belonging and love. She discovered that sometimes, Healing a marriage isn't about grand gestures, but about finding the courage to speak your truth and the willingness to forgive. John learned the importance of truly listening, of not letting the small, seemingly insignificant moments slip by because those were the moments that mattered most. He realized that love required attention and nurturing, even in the quietest, simplest ways. And in John's story is a testament to the resilience of love and the power of change. After decades together, they rediscovered each other not as the people they once were, but as the people they had become. Their journey reminds us that no matter how distant love may seem, with patience, open hearts, and honest communication, even the deepest wounds can heal. In those small moments of togetherness, they found the joy they had thought was lost forever, proving that love, when nurtured, only grows stronger with time. As we reflect on and in John's journey, it's a powerful reminder of how love and connection can be rekindled, even after years of drifting apart. Their story shows us that with honesty, patience, and a willingness to change, we can overcome even the deepest divides in our relationships. So, what have you learned from this story? Has it inspired you to take a step toward reconnecting with someone you care about? Or maybe to be more mindful of the small things that truly matter? Please share in the comments one lesson from Anne and John's story that you plan to bring into your own life. We'd love to hear how their journey has resonated with you and what actions you'll take to strengthen your relationships. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment below and let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiring stories and life lessons. Thank you for watching.